Oh my goodness.
Okay, we're good.
She was.
Is Matt somewhere today? Is Matt?
No, he is not. He's up to Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. Today is Tuesday, August 6th, 2024, and this is the Conway Heights City Council work session. We're going to start today with just a quick review of our business meeting, which
I think.
is fairly short. I can get there. So we'll start with the pledge. Suzanne, Councilor Highland, you okay to leave us in there? Thank you. So we do have something cool that I'm excited about. So if you've noticed item number 3, the youth city council elects a mayor every year. And so council member Burrell is going to take some time and introduce the new youth city council mayor and the person that they've chosen is a renowned debater and has won national debates. And so we're gonna, if I'm correct, we're gonna allow her to give her the same speech that she won her great debate on, right?
Yes,
Is that-
yeah.
So we'll let you, I'll turn the time over to you and let you run that acknowledgement, but that'll be kind of fun.
Yeah,
Something
it
we
should
don't
be
do a
very,
lot, but that'll
very
be
enjoyable. Yeah.
interesting. And it's Mary Ann, remind me her last name.
Jensen.
She's an impressive young woman. Yeah, so great. We'll do a citizen comment period and then we'll move on to two, possibly one, more than likely one action item to consider as a council. So the first one is actually consideration of ordinance 419, adopting a new part 8 Public Health Advisory Committee of chapter 2.140 of the Conway Heights Code of Ordinances. So this is a staff report. We're going to talk about this here in just a second. So we're not going to talk about it now, and we'll talk about some of the options we have to delay that. Item 5.2 is consideration of resolution 2024-54, approving agreement for a construction management services. And Matt, why don't you tell us all about that?
Oh, the exciting stuff. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is for the storm drain project, the one that is going through one of our residents' backyards. It's caused him great consternation and problems, but he has been an extremely cooperative individual with us, so much so that he and his wife went back east to live for the summer, so he can let us do this. So the contract you have in front of you, we've already approved the construction with Lyndon Jones. We did that a couple of weeks ago. This project, this contract is for the construction management of that project, so we can have the testers out there and the surveyors and make sure that we're getting this done right. It's especially important given its location.
Does the initial contract cover the restoration of his yard?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
the initial contract, I believe if needed, we have to rebuild his deck. We're not sure yet, but we will work with him. But it's in the bid. It's, all of these things are in there, so knock on wood, the price can only go this way as opposed to that way, but I'm not gonna brag just yet. But yes, we have his yard restoration, his driveway, his patio, and all of those things. It caused a lot of havoc in his yard, but like I said, he's been extremely cooperative and a wonderful person to work with. Both he and his wife, and his little dog, who likes to come greet you at the door and just go by.
So maybe we could get him a little gift basket after.
Yeah. We will certainly, we have been in contact with him about every 2 weeks, letting him know. We'll send him pictures and videos as we go.
Okay.
But he's not due back till the project's completed.
Okay.
And we'll make sure.
Appreciate that,
Yes, sir.
context. Questions or comments from the council?
Just one question.
Yes, sir.
How are the folks feeling on 17th East?
We have not had any, I don't know, you tell me.
Oh, no, I'm just
I guess I should have.
You know,
that
'cause
question.
I drove by there the other day and I just thought, well, it's good that they're,
Yeah, we are moving. We haven't had no real issues. A lot of contacts made with all the residents.
Right.
Many coming out, asking for some things that they didn't think about at the time. We're trying to be accommodating where we can.
Mhm.
If it doesn't raise our cost or it's very minimal, we are doing that. But overall, the project's going well.
Looks like it's coming along.
Yeah, it's coming along, and I think it'll be a good improvement along there.
Good.
We have a couple of property issues to finalize, but other than that, it's moving.
Is the one issue still in the same?
It's still out there, yes,
Okay.
sir. And I'll talk about it in a bit.
Perfect. Sounds good. Okay, thank you. And then the consent calendar approval of minutes is for our work session, the city council meeting, 16th of July. So thank you. So I did fail to mention, we'll excuse Councilmember Matt Holton from our meetings today. He's out of town traveling, unfortunately, he couldn't get back in time. So we'll see him in a couple weeks. So we have, let's see, 5 different staff reports to discuss today. So we are going to begin with item A, which is a general obligation bond discussion. So I've talked with Scott and Mike, and I've asked them to kind of set the table. This discussion can go in lots of different ways, but and invite up Mark from Zions Bank, Mark Anderson. Hi, Mark. Thank you. And anyway, so I'll turn the time over to Mike and Scott and let you guys go from there. And, you know, before I do that too, we're excited to welcome next to me, Jared Gerber,
Thank you.
our new city manager. Sorry, Jared, you're sitting here going.
You're good.
So I failed to mention to do that. Thank you for being here. We're excited to have you as in this important position. And we're excited to have your direction and thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, Scott and or Mike, I don't know who wants to go first.
Maybe I'll start first. So a couple of things that we've been discussing, and I'm gonna pull this up to share, is with our general obligation bond that we've been looking at, we priced it. We figured out that the likelihood of taxable versus tax exempt is 40% taxable, 60% tax exempt. Depending on the development, and that will be trued up as we get to a real development, you know, true proposal rather than conceptual proposals. As we go along there, and that being that the tax exempt areas are areas that the city has mainly control over. And the taxable areas are areas that are maybe commercially controlled or with a commercial building on it predominantly. And then we've looked at 2 other options. One is a $25 million par value and a $30 million par value. And the reason for that is just to have council contemplate where you want to be with the overall par value of the bond. You can actually go a 2% over premium So on a $2.5 million bond, that would be $500,000. On 30 million, it would be a little bit more than $500,000. In order to gain a little extra funds to be able to help pay for the closing costs and the initiation fees and other things that go along with your issuance of the bond. But we're trying to figure out the dynamics of how much it would cost per month and so on and so forth. As you look at the rates, the tax exempt rates are just under 4% on a 20-year. On a 30-year, it goes to 4.5%. On the taxable, it's 4.7, a little better than that. And on the 30-year, it's just about 5%. With the blended rate being 4.135 and 4.640. So almost 0.5% spread in each of those areas, not exactly, but you know, you're in the ballpark of 0.5% spread as you look at that. But as you look at this, the 770,100 is important because that's our average home value for the tax year of 2024 in the city. And that number is given to us by the assessor's office at the county. So if you were to take a $25 million bond and amortize that over 20 years, this line becomes the average. So at 136,000 annually, $11.35 per month. If you, for every additional or less 100,000, it would change by 17.69 or $1.47 a month. And on a business, because businesses don't get the residential exemption, it would be 32.17 and 267 per 100,000 of business value. If you stretch that to 30 years, it does change that. That's not something we were planning on, but that's just as we ran the two ways, you can see that. On a $30 million bond, if you ran that at 20 years, it does go up in cost on the average home from $11.35 to $13.64. And you can also run that out at 30 years, and that cost of $11.43 comes very, very close to the 25 million at 20 years. So those are things to keep in mind as you're looking at the final dynamics of the bond. And the reason to look at maybe 30 million over 25 is not because you are guaranteed that you're going to use $30 million, but if we ran into any cost impacts that we didn't anticipate, or we had estimated it'd be, say, $4 million to do something and it comes back at $4.5 million. Some of these kinds of things as we go along through this project, since it's a multi-year project, you can't just go out and say, well, we'll just increase the $25 million bond to 26 million, but you can get a $30 million authorization and only let $26 million of bond out. So that's something to consider as we go down through this path, but that's not something I'm saying we should do one or the other.
Is this information on the website?
It is not on the website. We just got this information back today, literally, for everything that we have been getting. We had some late last week and then some today that came back on this as we were contemplating.
I mean, is this something that will be shared on the website?
Yes.
Or is that what you anticipate?
Yeah, and it will be part of the bond resolution that's adopted in 2 weeks. So whatever you say will be included in the resolution. If it's 25 million, it will be 25 million. If it's 20 years, it will be 20 years. And so these are just conceptual at this point in time, and the rates are conceptual because we wouldn't actually be entering into the bonds until probably at least the earliest we could do it would be in January of 2025, or more likely sometime between January and June of 2025 until we really are ready to go forward on that. And some of that will have to be, you know, contemplated based on getting a true site plan versus a conceptual site plan, and getting a developer partner to go with us on, you know, moving forward.
Great. So we're going to talk about that in more detail, but yeah, let's kind of keep going.
Yeah, other than that, some of the things, and Randy isn't quite here. I told him we'd probably be ready about 4:15. Initially, we thought we would have a little bit more discussion before this. So some of the things, though, that we need to consider is what we want to allow the bond funds to be utilized for. We're anticipating that they would be used for the open space areas, for the roadway that goes through the project, for the land under all the buildings that would be built and as well as any, sidewalks and maybe roadside areas that would be developed and all that kind of stuff. And then the reason for the taxable is that those areas would be likely have a building built on them and in essence be leased back to whoever the building owner would be for a period of time, probably a long period of time, probably 50 years or something along those lines. And then the tax exempt area stuff being development of the open space, the purchase of the land under the open space areas and the roadway development. And then purchase of the land underneath the parking structures. And so that's kind of the concept of how we're getting to anyhow that spread of roughly 40-60 on the taxable versus tax exempt. When we're utilizing the bond funds, one of the questions that has come up is, well, what if when we're developing this, we get economies of scale and we're able to spend less? Could some of the excess bond funds be utilized for other areas in the overall 70-acre development area? And I think that when we've talked before with Randy mainly, who's the lawyer that's gonna, write it all up, is it depends how we write our bond resolution. If we write our bond resolution open enough to allow for that, then yes, it can be used for that. If it says only for these 11-ish acres that we're going to be developing here, then no, you couldn't, go across the street and use it. So, excuse me, we need to be careful how we write our bond resolution, how the voting or the election language is written and so on and so forth, because a lot of that will depend on how we are able to utilize the funds when we ultimately go out to bond.
Yeah.
Is there anything I'm missing, Mark, that you can think of?
Just the other conversation I'd had with Scott is, we're kind of in a tumultuous financial market situation right now. If anybody's been watching their 401ks the last 2 days, not good yesterday, better today. But I would recommend that we revisit these interest rates in a couple of weeks. I mean,
Yeah.
Admittedly, the market's projecting we'll see some interest rate reductions by the Fed starting in September and possibly again in November and December. So if we can show that the market's actually in a better place now than in 2 weeks than it is now, then we'd want to reflect that on the estimated tax impact.
So does interest rate have to be in the parameters resolution?
No, but we use that to calculate the estimated tax impact based on what current rates are.
Okay. Because like you said, I follow what you just said closely. I think the perception is we might even see more than a quarter in September. We might
Yeah.
see a half, and maybe another couple quarters. We could see a full point by January when we start looking at issuing bonds. So anyway, that there's no restriction on anything election related parameters resolution. When we get to January and ready to go, we're looking at current market interest rate.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right now, we just have to give our best estimate of what that impact
Okay.
would be on the citizens.
Okay.
The bond passing.
And I know you're really smart, Mark, so any idea on differences in interest rates with what we just looked at?
Well, usually there's a relationship between bond rates and treasury rates. They're usually in the mid 60%. MMD, what we call municipal market data, is about 65% of what comparable treasury rates are. But MMD probably responds a little slower to getting to those ratios. But so if you see a full percent change in the Fed funds rate, you can't expect to see a full percent change in the interest rates that you'd see in the market for bonds.
That was my question, yeah, so. And hopefully, if you don't understand that, Fed funds rate is just what banks charge each other for overnight borrowing. And although markets move in similar ratios, they don't move exactly, yeah, so. But anyway, fascinating, okay. Anything else, Scott or Mark, on that?
That's kind of the main stuff. Pardon me. That's the main stuff that I had, prepared, as we're doing it. you know, if there's any dialogue that you want to have and or questions that you want to ask, you know, we're here to help you to be as comfortable as you can with things. So if you have a question we haven't addressed, please ask. Even if we don't know immediately right now, we can even maybe know, you know, if we put our heads together for a minute, maybe we can, you know, get you an idea of what we think it is. And I know that Jared has been through a general obligation bond at Sandy. It was a little different related. It was for a fire station. But the process that you go through is similar. And to get a geo bond, it's just the purpose is different. And so some of the things that you need to do are very unique that way. So here's Randy. So if you have any legal questions, Randy is the man. No, that's okay.
No, we're just getting started in this,
As
so.
far as palatability to the voter, there's really any difference to them between a 30 and a $2 a month.
Yeah, we can get into that discussion. Mike, do you want to add anything context wise before we start talking about these specific?
Really quick, I'm gonna just touch on the public education and public outreach, kind of what we've done and what are the next steps, and then I'll turn it back over.
That's exactly where we're going.
So this should only take a couple minutes. As you are all aware, and we're appreciative of the council helping out at Butlerville Days. And the Town Center Advisory Committee and everyone that spent time at the city's booth. It was very, very well attended. Had a lot of conversations with a lot of different residents, and anecdotally, there seemed to be a lot of positive response on both the project itself, but also the prospect of potentially a bond to invest in that project. So what's been done, obviously, as you know, we finalized site plan concepts. Those were shared at CDRA meeting about a month or so ago. We've kind of refined the branding for the project of the Heights, and that's what you've seen out there. That's the banner at the Butlerville Days tent, and that's kind of what we've coined this project's name. The city website has a lot of information on this now, and then the project website,chtowncenter.com, that top right screenshot there is from that page. This has been updated with a summary of the project, what a bond would do and how a bond would help fund the project, and kind of the city's vision for that. That will continue to be updated as we finalize the bond parameters resolution, and the amount and the term and the financial impacts. So that site will continue to be built out. The August 2024 newsletter, which should be arriving in people's mailboxes if it hasn't already. The front page of that is an article from the mayor, all about the Heights project and the bond. So there's a big kind of blowout in that newsletter article about this as well. And then next steps, and these are only the next steps until the next council meeting, until the council votes on the parameters resolution. And then there's a whole calendar that takes off from that point through the election. But we've scheduled a public open house for next Monday, August 12th. That'll be from 6 to 8 over in the community room. The council's all invited and encouraged to attend that and help answer questions. We envision that as being kind of a larger version of the Butlerville Days booth, where we have the site plans all over the place. Some of this financial information will be on boards at that meeting as well, so people can ask questions and learn about the financial implications of voting for the bond. At the same time, we are coordinating with the advisory committee to start scheduling smaller neighborhood meetings that each of them can host and be supported at by members of staff or the contracted project team. We'd like to do the same with each of you on the council to start coordinating town hall meetings whenever you see fit, but helping get those organized and provide the support you need to start hosting those events in the next month or so. We will have a frequently asked questions page published on the project website. We just got a draft of the FAQs just this afternoon, so we're reviewing that right now. That will include anything from what is a general obligation bond, how does this affect me, to what is the town center, what's the city's vision here. That's for people that beyond the front page and the site plans want to really dig in and learn about the project. So that's what that page is meant to do. We are working to design and print some informational signs to just kind of get the name of the project out there and make people aware of that. That's also going to include some social media outreach to populations that may not attend a Butlerville Days or follow the regular city updates, but make sure everyone has the opportunity to learn about the project and the bond. The project team is also working to draft ballot language that we can review, and that would be sent to Salt Lake County after the council votes on the parameters resolution. And that is slightly different, but informed by the language in the resolution. But that's the language that will appear on
I know the
everyone's ballot.
deadline on that.
August 22nd.
For the ballot language?
Is when we need to send that. Yep.
May I ask a question on that ballot language?
Sure.
Does that provide to the voter information not only, let's say in the affirmative, if you vote affirmative, but if you should, any kind of argument for why to vote against it?
Yeah.
How does that format it?
And I know Randy knows a lot about this. Typically, there's some steps that we will publicize information, statements for and against the project that come after the parameters resolution, but I'll turn that over to Randy because I know he knows that.
Good question. The ballot language is mostly driven by statute. Don't have a lot of flexibility. Project, tax impact, maturity, things like that. And so it's pretty limited. But the voter information pamphlet, which is required by state law, is the place to put things like that. And so strategically, now I'm going back on your term, but strategically,
Sir.
we want.
I apologize. Do you mind sitting here so we can get you on the microphone? I'm so sorry.
Randy, trade me, please.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, am I on a microphone now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll just restate quickly. State law is going to drive what the ballot looks like. There's very little discretion in there. We do have a tax impact, the project, and then the maximum par amount, things like that. But there isn't a lot of room nor ability to add additional color. So you say, well, that's not sound quite fair. Well, strategically, you want to use your meetings, your voter information pamphlet to educate your voters so that before they get into the ballot, if you're relying on the ballot doing your educational format, it's going to struggle. But the argument you're describing would be perfectly placed in the voter information.
Is that on the state website that voters look at? And so.
At a minimum.
And so is it somewhat of an opinion? I'm trying to remember, I
Yeah.
have,
Yeah, your voter information pamphlet will actually be mailed out as well to all registered voters within the city. It is available on the state website. You may want it on your website, et cetera. There's nothing with doing it more than that. But two quick things on the voter information pamphlet. Number one, it has to be factual. You can't promote a particular result in your voter information pamphlet by saying, please vote yes, and this is why. What you would say is, here's the facts, right? Maybe even the alternative. If we don't do this, here's what we would do. So you can't expend city funds to promote a particular result, a yes or a no vote. That's the general rule to keep in mind. But the facts that you may choose to put in your voter information pamphlet may very well be different than what someone against it might say. So don't worry a ton about that. Just make sure that what you put into there is factual. That was more than you asked for, so I apologize.
Saying something like, if the resolution does not pass, the city will rely on a project that is more influenced by housing and multifamily development, something like that.
I'd love to give you a black line for that, and there isn't one, but that's the general rule. That's what state law would request, is you don't expend city funds to.
But I think we can make it clear enough to understand what our options are.
Absolutely.
As a city. Yeah.
The city council is considering this because.
thank you.
And is that, does Lindsay work on that?
They're helping us with that
With
as well.
science,
That'll be a
with
coordinated effort with
Okay,
everybody.
With
to
everybody, okay,
Develop that pamphlet, yeah.
great.
Just real quick, and then I'll turn it back to the council. We are also planning to set up a kiosk or a booth over at the rec center sometime before school starts, when people are getting in their kind of last big swim day. So in the next couple of weeks to, again, just be there where the
Where
people
will they
are
go?
to ask them if they know about the project and be able to talk to them about it there.
Where did you say?
Over at the rec center, probably somewhere, near their outdoor pool.
just on the sidewalk? or-
Setting up a table, so we're coordinating that with their
Okay.
staff right now. And then obviously the council will vote on the resolution August 20th. That information submitted to the county by the 22nd. And then from there, it's again, just being out there, educating on what this is and providing that voter information to everybody. Events at Hillside Plaza are being scheduled and planned for September right now. And then we intend to have a presence at, Bark in the Park and Trunk or Treat and any city event that we can attend. That's all I've got, just for very next steps. So the very next thing to be aware of is next Monday evening, the open house here at City Hall.
Do you add something else?
Are there additional things that you need to know as you're gonna craft the resolution for the bond that we haven't already kind of discussed up until this time? We're gonna still have a A or B option kind of a thing.
No, I'm assuming that you kind of socialize the taxable and tax exempt components, right, into that spreadsheet, conservative. Like an estimate, it's not something you're bound to. Project description is generic enough at this point to allow for those different expenditures. So no, I mean, other than the calendar and finalizing tax impact, environmental.
Okay. And then the one other thing, just we talked about this just briefly before you got here, is the 11-acre site that we're specifically talking about here on the southeast corner. If we had, say, a couple $1 million of remaining bond capacity, and we were more or less done with that site, are we able to write the bond parameter big enough to allow us to maybe utilize that for at one of the other development corners?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, keep it generic in the project description, and I'd probably recommend your voter information pamphlet maybe give that detail. That if we can accomplish this, then we may put that on, because what you don't want to do is put in your voter information pamphlet that you will do all of this, and then you don't have enough to do it. That makes sense. So we can, yes, we can.
Great. Anything else before we get into the discussion aspect?
I think so.
Okay, we'll keep you here. That's okay, Randy, just in case we have some questions. So a couple of important details that we want to discuss specifically. If you noticed in the education materials at Butlerville Days, as we opened that up to the public, we changed the verbiage from 25 to 30 million in there. And I wanted to tell you why we did that. Scott went into it a little bit, but as we got discussing, we were looking at absolute detail of trying to get as close as we could to what some things in today's dollars would look like to do what we wanted to do. Now, as we talked about increasing the amount from 25 to 30, we didn't, one of the things that was really important to me that I want to make sure is really clear, that Scott even mentioned, is if this project costs us $25 million, we don't have to request the extra $5 million. And the residents would never pay a higher amount. So if it took us a couple of years, the property tax amount could actually end up going up in later years as we use that dollar. But if it doesn't, they would never pay for it. It wouldn't be in any type of property tax assessment. So first off, is that kind of clear? Any questions on that?
Yeah, I was concerned about that tax burden, future tax burden. So it's great to see these numbers, taking into consideration the possibility of having that extended time.
Yeah.
It makes a world of difference.
Any thoughts, questions?
Well, I must admit, I've been concerned all along that, how far does 25 or even $30 million go? I mean, we do have to pay off the initial bond and, stacked parking garage, one medium size could be 20 million. I mean, so in working to achieve our vision for this property, this placemaking, I would rather err on the side of, making sure that, as you both have suggested, that we're not gonna have to create additional burden and we're gonna be able to accomplish what we need to do.
Yeah.
So it seems logical what you've just described to me.
Okay, and that's a really, really good point that I didn't emphasize that, you know, we've been in an environment in the last couple of years where construction costs went way up in a really quick fashion. And if that happened again, this would give us a little bit more of a safety net to not have to go try to scramble to do something else, so that the money's there if we need it, and then it's not. Any opposition whatsoever, concerns about the $30 million number instead of the 25?
Well, I will express something that was brought to my attention, someone who represents a lot of the senior community in District 4. And the comment was made that, you know, say for instance, $136 a year. This particular elderly person on a fixed income, their current total property tax to the city was about $300 a year. So the comment was made, oh, well, you know, my tax burden will go up by, you know, 33%. Now, that's not of her total amount she pays each year,
Right.
but within, so again, I'm just representing comments that I'm getting from people on very tight fixed incomes. There was some concern. So again, I don't know if there's any way when we think of equity to look out for those who are burdened. I don't know if municipalities ever consider any kind of, you know, look at a household income and any kind of, you know, compensate or, you know, compensatory arrangement to look out for those on very limited incomes. Is there any?
So one of the things to keep in mind is if their actual tax they're paying on their home for the city only is 300 and something, they will not receive that full 136 a year, because that on an average home, which is over 500 for the average sales tax for the city. So they would be a lesser amount. So that's one thing I would say, because it's based on the value of your home. Your value of your home's higher, you pay more. The value of your home's lower, you pay less. The second thing is as you, anyone is able to go to the county, ask for tax relief. That's administered through the county. When you get your tax bill, or your tax valuation that we should have all just gotten probably within the last month, you can go through and you can see all that. And there are ways to be able to go and look at a couple different options. One is if you want to protest the value of your home. And another is to ask for some tax relief. And there are some processes that you can go through with the county to get some tax relief, and that would be applied across the board. And there's several different reasons why you could potentially get tax relief from a property tax perspective.
Thank you.
That's actually really important
Circuit breaker.
to understand. Is that, and maybe we don't know this, do you know how often they grant hardship requests like that?
I don't know the details of that. I don't know if, do you know that? I don't know. I mean,
For the hardship,
yeah, that the county in terms of property tax, I don't know the details of that.
I don't know details. It's
Yeah.
not super regular.
But Scott, would it be accurate to say the city doesn't have the legal ability to?
We don't.
to adjust property taxes based on household?
Yeah, we don't.
Or
That's all up
It's all
to,
based on valuation.
yeah, it's kind of run in combination with the county assessor, and treasurer, as well as the state tax commission. They're all involved in the dynamics of how property tax rates are set and developed. But there are some ways to get relief. It's not gonna be for the average person. It's gonna be for somebody, you know, who truly has some financial issues that they can outline and prove. You don't just get it by saying, hey, I got problems, will you give me a break? And they say, oh yeah, we'll give you a break. You gotta actually be able to prove it and things like that. And they have a process together with hearing officers and other things to be able to go through that. But I don't know the process actually. So,
The other thing you could add, it's not super helpful, but there is no foreclosure right against a delinquent property tax until you're late 5 years.
Yeah.
So that does accrue some interest based on a treasury rate. It is a 5-year delinquency before anyone can come.
One of the discussion areas that could lead into is you know, we created some graphs, and I think Councilmember Roy, you were aware of that, of, of where the city would normally be for a tax increase in a couple of years, and this would help to offset that coming at that point, and could push it pretty far down the road, actually. And so, anyway. Any other thoughts, Councilor Brill or Newell, on the term, on the amount?
No,
You both feel pretty good that the 30 million number being
I
done,
think people are gonna key into the average monthly amount.
Yeah.
So,
which leads into the second discussion, which is the term. So, and I don't know, Scott, if you want to bring that back up.
Yeah.
So the term is the other thing that we wanted to spend just a little bit of time on, which is 20-year versus a 30-year. And if you've done a car, if you've done a home, the rate's gonna be a little bit higher, but it's gonna spread out the payment, and it's gonna lower the amount a little bit. It's not, I was hoping it would be a little bit better. Excuse me, but because of the difference in rate, you can see that it's almost a 60 basis points difference from the 20-year to the 30-year. So that offsets some of the benefit. But anyway, you can look at those numbers. So 20-year, let's actually look at the 30-year. So if we went 30-year from 20-year to 30-year, you're looking at a difference of $2.21 a month.
it's 30 cents for each additional 100,000, so,
Yeah.
I mean, I think we answered this before, but tell me again, is there any prepayment penalty? We're
So-
generating our revenues like we think we're gonna revenue.
There are call dates. And what is the earliest call date? Is it 10?
So let me add something right before you do that, Mark, just in this context. If the city was generating revenue from land lease and doing really well, we could not assess the tax and pay it ourselves at any point. So if we had extra dollars to pay off sooner, or we could actually, like I said, pay the value ourselves and not have the tax assessed.
Yeah, on the tax basis,
Okay,
but
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So with regard to prepayment of the bonds, they're typically what we call protected, which means they can't be refinanced or refunded within a 10-year period. It's most traditional. You can sometimes see those at 8 or 9 years as well, but usually you're locked into that rate for a minimum of 8 years before you have an opportunity to refinance.
Unless you have a higher rate, unless you have.
Yeah, if you want a shorter call period, you're gonna pay for it in higher interest rates.
yeah. And one of the things we did on our 2014 and 2016 bonds that we just paid off, and we did that through a refunding with our 2021 bond, is that it was favorable enough for us to pull the trigger early and put the money in an escrow account and earn revenue on those funds in the escrow account until the call dates, and then use that money to pay off the bond and lock into a lower interest rate. So it's not quite as simple as just going and refinancing your home when you decide you want to, because we are locked in for certain periods of time. And the longer that is out, the harder that is to do. If we get closer and we have a favorable opportunity, then we can look at some of those things as we move forward.
But paying for it if we have revenue makes a lot of more sense. So each budget year, we'll look at it and decide if we need to assess the tax.
And it could be parked as well, right? We could say, boy, our bottom line looks good. We're pushing the 35%. Let's push some money to that tax assessment and lower it. We can do that, yeah.
Generally, governments don't do that, but.
No, they find a different place to
theoretically, they
spend
find a
it.
Different way to spend it,
But
so.
we could be,
It's a community project, so.
we
that
could
would
be different, yeah.
Very beneficial.
Yeah.
Well, I agree. It's the temptation to, oh, we have this, or we could pay down the bond, yeah.
All good questions. What are your thoughts? 20 years, so is the savings enough? Because like you said, I think Councilmember Highland, you brought up a really good point. The talking point is the monthly cost.
Should be.
And so,
It's dollars, what can you buy for $2 anymore? It's
does the
not-
term have to be in the parameters resolution?
How long? The maximum.
The maximum, so it can always be shortened. So we could start out in the resolution at 30 and then issue in January at 20.
You could, there's a little bit of a connection, Mayor, to the tax impact that you put on, would probably be what you reasonably currently expect.
Okay.
But legally, You need to put the maximum. You cannot exceed the maximum.
Can't exceed the maximum. Okay.
So you're thinking a 30 million bond for 30 years? What you're moving toward.
I think that, well, that's what we're here to discuss. But the benefit is the monthly cost goes down. We can always shorten the term and pay for part of it. But that would be the lowest financial impact on our citizens is that.
Plus that future, that blanket for the future is too, with the limited expenditures.
I know.
Or if we
Good point.
have more expenditures.
Really good point. The negative aspect to that is we want to get it paid off and you get the burden to completely go away. And we could, 10 more years is substantial.
There's more,
Yeah,
30 million at 20 years means that you have less of an incentive for councils to spend that money instead of paying off.
Right.
So. Always a rock, Peter, big ball.
Mark, anything you want to add to that?
I think our experience is that, the higher the number that is, the more opposition that seems to come forward, so I don't know where the tipping point is. But I think it's something we should be conscious of.
If we see some rate cuts, will the 30-year term and 20-year term come down equally?
I think they'll be fairly similar. So I can't say with certainty that they'll be, you'll both get 50 basis points. We have such a strange yield curve that we're dealing with right now. Who knows what the future will bring.
Yeah.
Come on, Mark, get your crystal ball.
Just from a pricing for consumer pricing perspective, anything under $10 is like, yeah, no big deal. You start getting over that, which 3 of our 4 scenarios are over that anyway. And the difference between $11 and $13 is not a big deal.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but that's really up for discussion. We're not talking $30 a month versus $10.
Yeah.
My right now is leaning towards 30 million in 20 years, just because of reverse incentive. Spend money instead of paying off the bond.
And the
It's just
fact that we can adjust the term when the bond is issued. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
you can adjust it up. If you put it in for 20 years,
You
can't go.
I thought if you put it in for 30, you can adjust down.
Yes. that you
Okay,
can.
yes, you can't up, yeah,
Yes.
correct.
I understand that. I'm saying 30 million at 20 years.
Yeah.
Because of the incentive for dollars that really weren't intended for their use.
One other point that may be worth considering, Mayor, is sometimes taxpayers, groups, et cetera, may challenge the weighted average life of what you're financing. And here it's real property, it's land, probably 30 years is not going to be a big factor, but to the extent there were other components, someone may say, I wish, you're extending your borrowing past the useful life of what you're financing.
That's a good point.
Consider that.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a remote. I wouldn't let that tail wag the dog, but that's another, and I'm assuming this would probably be 30-year useful life. Or more.
For the most.
It'd be
part, the
more.
Land and open space.
Okay, and that may be a total non-issue, because land is,
the land leases we're envisioning
Say, what's the
50 to
lease
60,
term? Yeah, I would say they're
50
long
to
enough
60 probably.
terms that that's probably not gonna be an argument.
I mean, the only thing that comes to my mind is if we announce and put this on the ballot based on 30 years. At that average for an average home, $11 or $11.50. And then it goes, it's voted as a thumbs up. Then afterwards, we say, oh, we're gonna take it down to 20 years, so it's actually closer to $14 a month. Will that feel or appear as a bait and switch? Oh, they led us to believe I was voting for something that's closer to $11 a month. The reality is it's closer to $14 a month.
Good point. One of the things that could influence that would be the rate deduction, hopefully.
Yeah.
The rate deduction could get the payment closer. And we can always go you don't have to do 30 or 20, right? We could say 27.
Yeah, there's no legal restriction on, I mean, this is an estimate, maybe you know your best thoughts. And it arguably a conservative in the sense it might be higher than what you were betting what the reality would be, but there's no connection that you can't raise your tax rate above what you estimate. It's a political though question that you're correctly raising, like, what did we do? And you'll be able to look at the tax rate if and when you cut down the 20, 25 years and what it would, you'll have a better idea because you're more proximate to levying that tax than you are now too. Part of the calculation then.
Yeah. Maybe the rate decrease makes sense to go to 25 instead of all the way back down to 20, but.
And one other thing I'd mention, assuming that Cottonwood Heights has increases in taxable values, the impact to the residents over time will be spread over more people and the actual tax burden will diminish over time. So I think that's worth sharing.
Explain that again.
So if you have a fixed debt service payment based on your taxable value, if your taxable values go up because you have new growth, then it gets spread over a broader
Oh,
base.
got it.
And so the impact to the individual resident over time should decline.
Could decline, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's with new growth, so like if and when the gravel pit develops, some of the burden in essence would shift over to there from these bonds, because we wouldn't be increasing the bond debt that we're trying to pay off, but the net base that we're spreading it over would increase.
Yeah,
So,
good point.
I don't mean to be so skeptical about human behavior, but how many people are gonna open up their bill and take the one line item from the property tax and divide it by 12 and then compare it to last year's and divide it by 12 and say that was $2 more? It just really, I mean, people don't understand property taxes as it is,
Yeah.
let alone going to that level of comparison. So our human behavior tells me that's probably not gonna be a big issue.
Any thoughts? That's what we do.
I think I share mine. I'm ready to get moving.
You wanna go get a shovel?
I got 3 of them.
So are we in agreement? It sounds like that maybe we, the 30-year, 30 million at 30 years is where we start?
Yeah.
So that is a 11.43, right, payment? $11.43 with a high likelihood that it'll be lower than that due to a rate decrease.
So we can see those rates again, you said this in a couple of weeks, but I tend to agree with you on the volatility right now in the financial markets. We're like, within 2 weeks, we can see a difference.
The September meeting, when is that? That
End
will,
of September.
the end of September, okay.
Yeah,
don't
you're
think
gonna
that's
see,
driving
you're gonna
rates.
see bond yields fluctuating right now anyway, because of what's happened in the stock market.
Markson with the crystal ball, but
Yeah.
rates are moving, not so much because of the. Like
The
the
funds
federal that's
rate.
priced in,
Right.
it's the.
Yes, that's right.
The big, more global economic.
Yeah.
Like, Mark, I shouldn't even have said that. Lawyers can't talk about that.
That's what Randy said, yeah. He's pretty smart.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Councilmember Burrell, anything, yes?
No, I'm ready.
Okay. Mike, anything else? Scott, anything else we want to add?
Other than we have a full calendar that it's got a million points to it, so I didn't go over all of it, but I'll send it. We'll make sure it gets distributed to the full council so you can see the runway from here.
The last
to
thing I would add to the council is start thinking of dates sooner than later to do a town hall for your district specific to the heights and the bond.
Do you want us to feed that directly to Mike Johnson then?
To
Probably through Jared.
Oh, to
Go to
Jared, very
Jared,
good, yeah,
Yeah.
very good. I gotta get used to that, I got to get the groove, okay.
Forgot he was there.
Thanks for waiting for us here.
Yeah.
I do appreciate it.
Yeah, great.
Do we need any direction on, if we want to go outside of this 11 acres or? We want to include. the
Yeah,
language
actually,
in the
that's
bond?
actually a good thought. I think
Yeah,
my
that's
thought is,
where
let's
we-
make it broad
make it
enough
general.
that we have the
Yes.
flexibility
Make it
to do
general.
so. Does that sound good?
Wait, so, I'm sorry, I'm not.
in case we wanted to use any funds that didn't get used to expand the area into the CDRA,
corners.
which is the 70 acres versus the 11. If we leave the language broad enough, we did, and if something comes available to help spur the complete redevelopment.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Because for me, I want this to be a hub or a foundation for this walkable area. So I really like that idea.
If there's extra and you
Yeah.
so choose, so.
Yeah.
I think we're all in agreement to do that, to be broad enough in the language.
I don't mean the ballot language will be generic, it won't say 11 acres. I don't think we would have done that anyways, you know.
Right.
And then in your voter information pamphlet, there is a state law component that would require prioritization. In other words, if there's a possibility you don't finance all, it just means that outside of 11 acres would be one of your, a priority behind to help educate. That's easy.
Okay.
Easy.
Great, good point, Jared. Thanks for bringing that up. Thank you. Well, thanks, Randy and Mark. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate your expertise and guidance. And thank you, Scott and Mike as well. So we're gonna move on to item B, which is the Tavachi annexation update. And so Mike, did you have anything that you wanted to add first or?
Just very briefly, we checked in with the county on the plat process. That's kind of been that last remaining
So
item.
before you say
Yeah,
that,
you-
let's explain the background to where we are.
Sure.
Maybe do that and then we'll talk about what. we've done.
Yeah, okay, so to date, and I think there was a council presentation a couple meetings ago on Tavachi where the council's debated and discussed the merits of annexation, so I won't rehash any of that, but public safety access, the roadway, all of those impacts have been pretty well discussed at this point. The remaining item that was kind of on the table that we had recommended we wait and be resolved before bringing this to the council for action was a fairly minor technical like plat amendment that had been applied for by Tavachi through Salt Lake County probably prior to when we even began discussing the plat amendment or the annexation itself. What that did was take there's a stub road on the very east or west side of the development there that stubs right into a kind of a cliff right now. And they were proposing a plat amendment to eliminate that, consolidate that land into the lots on either side of that stub road, and then relocate an easement for water access and for any potential future emergency access through the north side of the development that would connect into, a potential upper development area of the gravel pit. We don't know if any of that area is actually developable. We don't have an application for the gravel pit, but that's where that easement was relocated from the west side to the north. That has gone through Salt Lake County's plat amendment process, and there's been a hangup with Salt Lake City Public Utilities, who is the water provider for the subdivision. They are for Salt Lake County. They are for Cottonwood Heights as well. So Salt Lake City Public Utilities weighs in on water related impacts to developments. There had been a delay in hearing back from Salt Lake City Public Utilities, which we didn't have an update on at the last meeting. I think some calls were made and they were pushed a little bit for a status update. And the last I heard is in July, Salt Lake City had indicated to the applicant that they could begin reviewing. They had a pathway forward. They needed to send in all the documentation again, the easement description, et cetera, and Salt Lake City would begin their review, but there was a pathway forward. That's as far as I know where it is today. Checking in with Salt Lake County on their process and their procedure. Once they hear back from Salt Lake City Public Utilities, they then have to take that plat amendment through their planning commission, which would be the same process that the city would do if that were in our city as well. There's a lot contingent on Salt Lake City's response timing, but if they got Salt Lake City's, kind of go ahead in the next week or two, or, fairly soon, they could potentially get that on their planning commission agenda in September. So they're about a month out from hearing back from the water department to getting that on their planning commission. That gets approved by the county mayor's office as kind of the final stamp, and then the plat amendment gets recorded. So that just gives you a sense of once they hear back from the water department, how long it would take to run through the rest of that process. It seems, as the county planner indicated to me today, to be about a month or so after they hear back from the water district. Timing on the water district's response is a little unknown at this point, but there is correspondence happening right now.
So the CWH HOA, the president, is here. Is there anything you want to add to that, Carrie, that's?
Just an update on that.
Do you want to come up?
Yes, if
Maybe
you could,
stand-
please,
Yeah,
yeah.
if you would. Just stand at the table even, you know. Last week, I did have a conversation with Laura Briefer, who's the director. So everything was set to go forward. They've had the documents for a long time. This was agreed upon them verbally in meetings with their engineers and our people almost a year ago. It's just been frustrating to communication part, but that seems to be sped up. She called and said that everything would be good to go. I told her I needed to have their department call Jim Nakamura at the county to say, hey, this has worked out. It's just a matter of paperwork being signed, so he can put us on the agenda to get that simple, what was thought would be a simple plat adjustment. And so I talked to Jim yesterday. Now, who's Jim, did you say? Jim Nakamura, he's the lead from the county.
Salt Lake County planning.
That was-
Planning,
planning. And so, Karen Greenleaf from the water department had called him. He didn't able to take call, he's called her back. So they both know what's going on, but as of yesterday, he was expecting to get it, but they've been exchanging phone calls. And Laura Briefer, who's the director, she agreed that all the paperwork, all the agreements there, it's just a matter of timing. And only the late she had, the gal that was handling all this was on vacation till the 12th of August, but she was going to get that communication to Jim Nakamura before then, what they've reached out and done. So I think we're actually at a point of moving forward in real time. Everybody else's agreement to it. It is a simple movement of an easement and a lot line adjustment to get rid of a stub road that was 20 years ago was to be a potential secondary access for emergency services. But a lot's happened at the gravel pit and that goes off a cliff now, so it's physically impossible. Yeah, so we're hopeful. Okay, good update. One of the, or did you have something, Councilor Hunt?
Not yet, I want
Oh.
to keep going.
Okay. So one of the reasons we wanted to bring the update to you all is, so once the approvals are in place, so we're waiting for the letter from Salt Lake Utilities, or from Salt Lake. It's just a phone conversation, good enough for Jim Nakamura. Oh, interesting, okay. So as soon as they get their approval, either verbally or then the county, Jim Nakamura will look to finish their plat amendment. Yes. Which is gonna have to do is go through a public hearing, but you said that they could get on September's.
Again, contingent on whatever
Timing.
approval they need. He said it's too late for August, but they could possibly get it on for their September.
Okay. One of the things that I had thought about was once the approvals are in place, you know, if we went forward with the vote on annexation, then we could go through the plat amendment process ourselves. But it sounds like I was worried that the county was gonna take another 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. If they get it into a public hearing by September, I would actually be okay. I think just letting that finish. Did you have something? No, I just saying we'll find out here the next week or so because everyone will be back in town. He will have had that conversation. And again, it's just a plat amendment, whether that works or we talked about just making it subject to that plat amendment being signed is then it could speed up. We're interested, to know where it's going in our ask to be part of Cottonwood Heights. There's only 2 times a year that you can submit to the state for annexation, and that the next one is January 1st. So we'd like to have everything done, be able to submit. I have no idea how long they take to approve something. One thing I found about this process the last couple of years is
not a lot of experience in the government anywhere about annexations like this.
Yes, I will back you up on that,
Yes.
having worked with the other ones.
Yeah,
It's very confusing.
I even had a conversation with Scott Baird today about
Okay.
the same thing. So, okay, great. So there's not a whole, anything that we really need to decide, really. We'll wait for the approvals to get in place and then we can have a further a better discussion. We'll get some timelines and honestly, if the county pushes us too far out, the discussion will be, do we want to bring this into the city and do this ourselves? So that'll be the next conversation based on how that goes with.
Yeah, if it goes quickly like we hope now.
Yeah.
It's a simple process, then that's easy. If it tends to drag out, that contingency for us to know where we're at. And based on basically the plat being recorded, then that would clear up any Ts or Is to be dotted.
Okay. Great.
As we hear back from the county, they've been pretty good about keeping us updated. We'll let the council know.
Great, thank you. No, appreciate it, Gary. The only other thing that I will add from my conversation with Scott Baird today was that the annexation, if it does get approved by the city, because there's a tract of land owned by the Metro, anyway, the county would actually have to approve the annexation, where they don't have to approve most annexations. But he let me know that today that would probably
Are
apply.
you referencing
Big
the,
road.
It's
No?
the property from the water tower, it comes down into that proposed easement area is what they're specifically talking about. And because of that would require county approval
And
So you're
this is
not-
Tavares
of the
annexation.
annexation. Yeah.
so you're not talking about the roughly 50 acres owned by the
No.
Walker Family Trust?
Nope.
So you see this as we vote first and then the county has to approve? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So that was what Scott Baird told me today. So if we vote to approve the annexation, that they would actually have to do it as well. But, and he said don't foresee that would be an issue, but I wanted to let you know that.
Insert something here. I'm going to need to schedule an annexation meeting. So when are we thinking about these neighborhood, going back to the neighborhood meetings and things? Are we trying to focus all those in September? Is there a certain time frame that you're wanting?
So are we talking about, is this something we can talk about? I think she's bringing it up with the annexation that,
Well, I'm trying to wrap up what we did with first when we were talking about scheduling these neighborhood meetings.
Sounds interesting.
And now also talking about in relation to having annexation meetings. Talk about that?
Is this just a meeting with the neighborhood to explain the annexation process? I don't see a problem with that.
Can you tell all you want to do and done?
Well, I know that, but when are you trying to do these neighborhood meetings for the GEO bond?
so
So that we
in
can
September
prioritize?
to, or early October, Councilmember Bro, let me know, the ballots are expected to drop
October 15th.
October 15th.
Okay.
So it might be a good thought to do it after October 15th. Well, anyway, yeah. Or is that, if you don't want to wait that long, we can do it before that.
I can't schedule it until I know when the mailings will be sent.
The mailings are sent out, the ballots will be mailed out.
No,
on the
no, I'm
15th.
sorry,
Oh,
the mailings telling all the property owners that they're considering an annexation. We're talking about a
Oh,
different
I'm
mailing.
sorry.
It's notification, so you can't really schedule, so, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. The next item on our agenda under staff reports is item C, which is the Ferguson Trail parking discussion. So, and what this pertains to is, so we all know, the Ferguson trailhead where you enter into that trail and canyon. So, the city went and did a Ferguson Trail parking structure that led into the park, to the dog park. And it micro, I don't want to say anything that's not correct, but and maybe you're gonna do this.
I've got some background.
Okay,
here. Do you want me to
I'm
just
gonna
walk
let
through
you
it?
give the
Yeah,
background
that's
rather
great.
than me, so I don't.
Interrupt me
get it wrong.
anytime, but I've got some slides here.
I'm gonna turn it right over to you, which is that's what I should have done when I started.
All good. All good. So this is a discussion, as the mayor said, about basically what to do with the parking stalls up at Ferguson Trailhead. And I'll explain some of the background and why we're having this discussion. And we have heard from a number of neighbors that are adjacent to this trailhead. So I'll just update you on all of that and then kind of ask for some direction at the end. So right now, up at the trailhead, this is up on Timberline Drive. There are approximately 15 parking stalls. A few of those are ADA stalls meant for access to the amphitheater, which you can see in the screenshot there. There's an accessible route up to that public amphitheater. But the others are just, you can see they're kind of just fit in where they fit, some parallel stalls, some perpendicular stalls kind of interspersed throughout that area. The rest of the area around that on the public street is one of two areas in the city that have permit parking restrictions in place right now, which means the only people that can park on the public road there are residents that live adjacent to the public rights of way, and they have to come in and get parking permits with the city. Otherwise, the vehicles parked there are subject to enforcement. That permit parking area is shown here. It's about a third of a mile in all directions of the trailhead, which is the yellow star. The orange area on the bottom is a new expanded permit parking area that was approved probably around 2020 or 2021. But the red permit parking area has been in place for 10 plus years at this point. So in total, that the colored area, whether red or orange, is where the permit parking is active right now. And then obviously down here, try to highlight it. This is Ferguson Park now. So that area is a parking lot now. So you can kind of exclude that from this map. So when Ferguson Park was constructed, the parking lot was built there, intended for use by people visiting the park itself, but also intended as a trailhead parking lot for both Ferguson Trail and any future Bonneville Shoreline Trail alignment that comes through this area up to the east. This parking lot contains about 45 parking stalls. The neighborhood concern from neighbors up on Ferguson, up on Timberline Drive near the trailhead itself has long been vehicles will typically check those upper stalls first, and they're very limited. So on busy trail usage days, those stalls get taken up very quickly, but it doesn't stop additional vehicles from checking to see if there are stalls available. So what you get is a lot of car circulation up there. We've had reports of cars turning around in people's driveways and other impacts like that of just kind of constant circulation on those high trail usage days. So the intention is that through signage and wayfinding, that hopefully some of that traffic is alleviated by the construction of the parking lot down below. That being said, we are still seeing a lot of demand for those upper parking stalls. In 2020, the council at the time adopted a Bonneville Shoreline Trail Access Master Plan. In this plan, it identified what is now Ferguson Park as a regional access opportunity for the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. So we feel that recommendation has been implemented, and we now have that regional scale kind of trail parking down below at Ferguson Park. The Bonneville Shoreline Trail Plan also recommended that when the regional trail access was constructed, that the stalls up above, the 15 stalls were removed so that all trail users used the lower parking lot, the large parking lot, and that prevented some of the circulation issues that we had heard from the residents in the area. That line, that recommendation to remove those trail stalls up above was added into this plan. It was not in the original draft plan, but it was added before the plan was adopted in response to public comment by neighbors in the area. So that has been the direction that the city's been following as it's constructed Ferguson Park. And I will note here, there was never a plan to remove the ADA stalls for amphitheater use. So we would leave those and maybe convert existing parking stalls into several more ADA stalls, but the non-ADA stalls for trail use would be removed. So kind of that brings us to kind of where we are now. When Ferguson Park was constructed, the last phase of that project was to block, remove, repurpose the non-ADA stalls up near the trailhead per that master plan. At the time, Salt Lake County, who owns, I will say, a portion of those parking stalls, the trail itself is owned by the county, and the boundary line between public right-of-way and county-owned land is kind of in the middle of a lot of those parking stalls. But Salt Lake County raised concerns and stated that a formal written request was required by the city before any decision was made to move forward regarding removal of those stalls. At around the same time, we got some questions from residents in the area wondering why the stalls hadn't been removed. So we explained, hey, the county raised some concerns. We're working through that right now. And that was probably a couple months ago. We've received probably a dozen or more letters from residents in the adjacent area, again, reiterating their support for removal of those stalls to alleviate some of the traffic circulation that they see and some illegal parking that they continue to see. That being said, the original plan was approved by a previous city council. Obviously, there were comments made to Salt Lake County of people in the area in support of the stalls remaining. So we decided before moving forward with a written petition to Salt Lake County to remove those stalls, that we bring this back for council input and discussion. We first took this to the Parks, Trails and Open Space Committee as it seemed a good item for them to consider and discuss within their purview. And this went to the last meeting they had, which was back in June. Their recommendation after discussion was to leave the ADA stalls and work with the county to explore removing or modifying the existing stalls, but creating, maybe a drop-off area for, say, climbers with equipment or, cars that have kids or young children or family members that are a little less mobile, that could be dropped off and then the car could return down to park at the parking lot. And then to also explore some light amenities up where these parking stalls are, such as bicycle parking. Obviously, creating a drop-off area, bike parking, any improvement there that isn't just blocking the parking off, does require that's a project, would require some budget, but that was the PTOS recommendation. You may hear from some of the residents up at this area in the business meeting, just regarding the removal of those stalls as well. Just given all the kind of complexity and the county's concerns, before we move forward in petitioning the county to remove these stalls, we wanted to kind of bring this to the council, give you context for why the plan was to remove the stalls and get direction from you on whether to proceed with a petition to remove the stalls, if we should work on a middle ground option with Salt Lake County, we should consider leaving those stalls in place. We don't need a decision tonight, as you may hear some public comments, but we're just looking for direction on this before we allocate a bunch of time into working with Salt Lake County.
Has the county given us any reason for why they would not, why they don't want the stalls removed?
Sure, I don't want to speak for them. My understanding of their concerns is twofold. One, their purview is a regional impact, and there were some regional concerns that blocking parking up here would limit access to the trail itself, which from the city we'd push back a little against because there is a large parking facility. We've actually, in my opinion, increased access to this trail by building that large parking lot. But that was their concern, one part of their concern. The other is they felt that the original interlocal agreements between the county and the city that were used to purchase this land and then mandated the city to construct and improve what is now Ferguson Park. They felt that agreement between the county and the city prohibited the city from removing the parking stalls. We've reviewed those agreements. There's nothing in there that's crystal clear on that. But there is the other factor that a portion of those parking stalls is on.
So crystal clear versus, is there any type of language whatsoever in there?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. So they okay.
There's nothing that talks about upper parking. It all talks about the improvements in the lower, what's now Ferguson Park.
Okay.
Which we feel we've fully.
Councilmember Bras.
Yeah, could you come back to the slide that showed the whole area?
Oh, yeah.
Those previous slides.
That one?
This would be fine.
Yeah.
So for council consideration, the sidewalk that is currently in place from the time that a person would walk from the parking lot on their way to the trailhead. This area, the sidewalk, of course, is only a 4-foot wide sidewalk. Property owners along here have, probably before the city incorporated, built their fences all the way out to the sidewalk. So if you've ever walked for any length, if you're walking alone, no problem. Many people hike in groups of 2 to 4 people. And a liability for the city, and this has precedent based on a circumstance that happened, I believe, in the Boston area, where remote parking was provided by the city to a trailhead, but it was inadequate, it was unsafe for groups of pedestrians, where walking in a group, you had 2 or 3 people walking in the street in order for them to converse as they made the trek up to the trailhead. And one of the pedestrians was struck by a car. And when it litigated, the city was held liable for the death of that pedestrian. And my concern that, again, I want us to think about, and so this, in my opinion, would favor having a drop-off area where larger groups of people could drop off and somebody goes down and parks the car. Is that, again, there's a long stretch here. It's actually a blind curve. People on collectors, more and more, are driving faster and faster. So if we are trying to prevent tragedy and financial liability to the city, this is not, in my, from everything I know about pedestrian safety, this is not a very safe area. Once you get up to somewhere in this area, it's less of a problem. But again, this is a major collector that cars drive on. And again, with the blind curves, with the fences pushing up against the sidewalk, only a 4-foot sidewalk, there will be people and are people that walk in the street because it's not very
So
accommodating.
can I ask,
Yeah.
is there anything from the current trailhead that would stop somebody from dropping them off at the current trailhead that exists today? I mean, so let's say a group of people, like you said, want to come, so they take their car up and stop at the trailhead and let them out and then go back and park, and they have to run up there.
Turning around, right?
Yeah, you,
Turning around people's driveways.
So I
Well,
think if
isn't,
we, yeah, you bring up a really good point. I think the idea would be if there was a way to use some of these parking stalls to create the ability to turn in, and it says, you know, drop off, and you kind of can turn around and drop them off and then bring the car down. What wasn't, because we were in the same PTOS meeting when we all talked about this. And hopefully we could do that without major.
that, yeah, if it was a pullout area, you know, that's one thing. The cul-de-sac to the north, it's all a public road, so the infrastructure's in place, you know.
Isn't there a turnaround at the end of the cul-de-sac?
I mean, you can just drive around. That's a large cul-de-sac, so.
So the trailhead is, because we can see the trailhead, and then you'd have to go,
Trailhead's
if they
there.
didn't want to do a 3-point turn.
Well, the
they'd have to-
trailhead is really not here. The trailhead
Right.
is down here.
Maybe
Right.
right there.
This only takes you up to the amphitheater. Nobody, I've never seen anybody walk, you know, anyways, most people come to this point, so. Where is it this, Mike, that is the county owned, or is it this portion?
The
that's
line,
county?
I don't have a good, the property line kind of goes right through, you can see my cursor on the bottom parking stalls there, kind of goes right through the middle of those cars. About half of the parking stalls are in city right of way and half are on county land.
Could you go back to their one, and Councilmember Burrell, would you please just outline for me where somebody walks from the
This one.
park up to
Yeah,
that
so,
trailhead?
so here is the parking lot. I don't know if there's a lot.
Yeah.
So the parking lot is here. And right now, this is a steep embankment. So unless we provided a way to cut up, I don't know what's possible here. There's some people that kind of cut up on this steep bank. But people are really expected to walk all the way up, maybe if I have used a pen. They're expected to walk up and start here and walk on this sidewalk over here.
Kind of like that.
And then.
So to
you-
cross a
you have to
road?
Cross a street, there's no sidewalk there, and then you come on up and come around. And
Cross-
here is
cross
where you
again.
actually start walking on the trail.
There's really not a great direct way, so there's a big incentive for people to go up there and look for parking before they decide to park in the Ferguson Park area. And then so a turnaround, you would put at the south end, right where the trail
If
starts?
Preferably you put it here, in my opinion, unless there's driveways here and here, and there's a driveway here.
Goodness.
And this did come up in
So
the,
is the county threatening litigation?
No, they just said, we're concerned about this. We're not likely to support it, but if you want to pursue this, you know, submit your rationale in writing to us and we'll review it.
Okay, so, and what are you asking for from us?
Just some
Those-
direction, because our plan right now is to modify those parking stalls up there, but it's gonna require some effort in working with the county on that.
So I'm interested in the PTOS recommendation. The number one thing to me is that the residents have understood since 2020 that the stalls were gonna be removed.
Mhm.
And so to go back on that, to me, is an issue. In 2020, did we say that we were gonna leave the ADA stalls?
Yeah, that's in the
Okay,
plan.
So
Yep.
they're okay, so they would have known back then that the ADA stalls can stay.
Yep.
To me, I don't see any other reason to leave any stalls other than, I don't know what the residents think, and maybe we'll hear about that tonight if there's an, you know, if we can create some type of turnaround. For
Well,
people
I
that wanna
think we
be
need to
dropped
think
off.
about serving all of the users of this trailhead. And if in our master plans, we indicate that we are incentivizing active transportation with the advent of e-bikes, these steep hills, it negates any problem with navigating steep hills. And I strongly urge the council to see that it aligns with all our master plans you know, I think we could explain to the residents of the area that a superior facility, rather than just spending whatever it would take, the tens of thousands of dollars to take away parking stalls and repurpose and instead repurpose for two very useful things, and that's the ability for larger groups to do a drop off, or the climbers to be able to drop off with their equipment. Yeah, I think it would be lessen our liability as a city to show that we're providing a way for people to drop off larger groups of people
So
at the
does that
trailhead.
not exist now? The ability to drive to the trailhead, to stop your car, to take out some climbing equipment and drop off a big group.
You'd be in the public right of way, right? If all the parking stalls were filled right now, there's no pull off. You'd just be parked in the public right of way.
Okay, so but we wouldn't have to change a whole lot if we took out stalls to allow them to move into that area to drop off and then turn around. And
I think in
come back.
that case, it would be a drop off and we'd have to direct them down through the cul-de-sac to turn around and head back down. It may not resolve the circulation concerns that prompted that recommendation in the original plan, but there is a low budget solution. If it's not, hey, build a full turnaround at the trailhead, because that would have to cut in and retain earth, and that's a substantial project.
So I would favor bike parking and I would favor a drop off depending on like low budget drop off situation to alleviate that. Right, some good concerns.
And I think, I mean, you know, again, it was a previous administration that made all these decisions to have permit only parking. I mean, I grew up in a place where the local beaches would have, you know, you had multi-million-dollar houses. And all the residents that lived along the coast accepted the idea that the public had the right to access those local beaches. If you are living in a highly desirable place, you have to accept the public has a right to access this, whether your home is worth $5 million or $50 million. And
So, but I thought that
I think
was.
we've done, I know, but I think we've done so much for the residents of this area to alleviate the parking. Now they don't have anybody parking around their house. And if somebody pulls into their driveway, I guess they could call the police department or something, but we could have signage that helps people to understand. You could turn around in the cul-de-sac, or I'm having trouble. And I want to be sensitive to my constituents. A few of them have contacted me. They want those stalls removed. But I think that the city may have made a promise that hadn't been really cleared with Salt Lake County, who owns some of this property.
So I'm a little confused because I thought the PTOS recommendation and yours was to remove the stalls.
Well, it was to
except for the
repurpose that asphalt. So instead of going to the expense of removing asphalt, is to repurpose it for the use of people dropping off and also for those arriving on electrified scooters and skateboards and e-bikes and non-electrified, you know. And again, fulfill what's in our master plans related to bicycling and green, you know, open space and all the things that we put there.
Yeah, I'm just a little, you know, we created the parking lot was built to accommodate people to come and park they do have to walk, but you know, you're gonna go on a walk anyway, you're going on a walk on a trail. So I mean, to not, so I'm a little, I'm. I guess we'd need to talk about more what repurposing means because, and what the residents feel about that. Cause you know, I think they mostly just don't want to have massing of cars there and that's why the parking lot was built. And so if, I think maybe we listen today and see if there's some people that are gonna comment to us and anyway, so I don't know if I know 100% what you disagree
Well, I
with.
think we could ask staff, how about if we ask staff to come back with a little deeper sketch on a modification that repurposes the existing asphalt and stalls and some estimated associated costs with a minor repurposing versus the kind of repurposing that apparently the residents are asking for. Again, it was a previous administration. Are the residents expecting that the asphalt is removed, or to what level are they wanting these stalls to go away? I mean,
Based on the
I
language
just
in the
don't.
plan, I think it's just removal.
So is that
There's
removal
no
of
expectation
asphalt?
of parking. It doesn't have to. I mean, you can put Jersey barriers there and block it, and that's a very low cost solution that you can do right now. But I think ideally, and I think what the plan was to remove some of the asphalt and, you know, do some light landscaping of that area.
We also have curb and gutter issues that we have to resolve up there for stormwater. So we would have to look a little closer at it for repurposing, but the repurpose is a turnaround, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, bike parking.
And a bike. well,
But
bike
even if
parking
it's
too.
perhaps a pull-off where people get out and then the car proceeds to the end of the cul-de-sac and turns around. I just think these are public roads. We need to remember, these are public roads, and I want to look out, of course, for the neighbors in that area. But I think we're getting to the point of not spending our city monies in a way that serves all of our residents. I don't think that they have danger. I mean, again, there are peak hiking days. I would make another pitch for a shuttle system, which I want to go on the record as, I hope everybody's aware of the crime that just occurred in the Olympus trailhead parking lot recently. Within the last week, there was some severe crime that occurred in the middle of the night. Parking lots, especially ones like Ferguson, are prone to crime, additional noise and problems for the residents. Going forward, I hope that we can come up with a vision for shuttle systems. In fact, this very thing, if we had in mind small van shuttles being able to pull off and drop people off, that would be the absolute ideal situation. Lower vehicle miles traveled, less pollution, less danger to pedestrians and cyclists, and many, many benefits to thinking of shuttling versus expensive parking lots that are prone to crime and problems during the night.
Councilmember Newell, anything you wanted to add?
No.
Okay, so I guess it looks like, Mike, we're asking you to come back with a little bit more detail on what any repurposing would look like. So I think we're in agreement. We want the stalls removed.
Yeah.
Okay, so that those are not just regular parking. We'll keep the ADA, which was in the agreement, and what it would look like to inexpensively allow cars to turn around, I guess, or to drop off and to put a bike. I don't think it'd be a big deal to put a bike cage to be able to lock
parking,
the
yeah.
bike up at the trailhead. But anyway, yeah, so, okay. Is that enough?
I'm really alarmed, but not alarmed, but I'm very observant about how many more electric vehicles I've seen this summer. It's gonna take off. I like my vehicles, scooters, bikes. It's
Yeah, we
so
need to be
easy now.
forward thinking
Yeah.
of where this is trending and make sure that we are
Very
accommodating that in a safe way. I thank you.
Okay, is that good, Mike?
Thank you.
Item D under staff reports is an update on our Hawk crosswalk light at Fort Union Boulevard and Bella Vista. So Matt,
Mike can do it.
Mike,
No, I'm
wanna-
okay. I'm all good.
Mike's talked a little bit. You need your vocal cords are better. Matt, why don't you give us an update of where we are and I'm gonna have Jared pass around an agenda that we have for a celebration. We're gonna have a ribbon cutting. But anyway, Matt, go ahead.
as far as the Hawk signal itself, the physical structure, that is completed. The ADA ramps around it are completed. The controller for it goes in, I think in 2 more days.
So
of
they
schedule.
found it?
It's been located.
We were a little worried.
You were? I just want to thank you for the 3 ulcers that I have. No. But so that is scheduled to be installed this week. That being the case, we still will not turn it on until some things occur, and those things that need to occur. If you go out there now, and I'm sure the public has seen, we have started the Cape Seal project on Fort Union. That is very similar to the one on, it's the same as the one on Highland. The Bengal right here, all of these projects, that has started. The reason I don't really want to turn the Hawk on just yet, we're gonna keep it as a closed crosswalk because we won't have the striping down until next week. They will finish the chip seal portion of the Cape this week, and they should be finished in front of the Hawk tonight. And then they will start Sunday on the top, the top of it, if you will.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
So even with the factors that you've just brought up, flashing yellow is designed to let people know that weren't used to it. Hey, there's a new structure
Yeah.
here and light. So would there be any reason to not turn on the flashing yellow?
No. We'll follow the procedures that are necessary. Once again, we need to find out what those are. I know on traffic signals, there are rules on that. I'm not sure about the Hawk,
Okay.
but we'll follow those procedures, and what they are. But we are on schedule. There's nothing that's keeping us from the day that you have designated as opening. So, we are pushing for that. So that the surface, the slurry surface that goes on top of the chip seal, which is the smooth surface and makes it, a black tar look, will be going down starting on Sunday. And then Wednesday of next week, they will be painting the crosswalks, the school crosswalks at the Hawk, and up on 2700. All of those will be painted in time for school to start. And we're pushing that. We're pushing the Cape Seal project quite a bit, to meet the school openings, because of this. So as it is now, as things stand, we will be ready to open on Friday at the designated time. The lights will be working, the stripes will be down. We did run into during this project, I will say, the project, believe it or not, the Hawk itself is on schedule, and it's actually ahead of schedule from what was originally contracted. Takes a while to get through a federal project. We did run it. We would have been done about 2 weeks ago had we not run into utilities that weren't there, that we weren't aware of. A broken stormwater pipe ended up costing us to have to cut the road as opposed to boring the road. Most people would not have even known this project was happening if we were able to bore the road. So it has caused a great deal of delay, and it's been difficult for everybody. I appreciate the patience, but sometimes things happen that you just can't avoid. But as far as the Hawk signal itself is completed, the surfacing will be completed in front of it by Monday. They'll start striping the crosswalks for the schools on Wednesday. And then once the complete surface is done, all of Fort Union, they will begin the striping for all of Fort Union and finish that up. So there'll be a safe crosswalk for the students on opening day there at Bella Vista at the crosswalk, and also up on 27 by Butler Elementary. So that's in a nutshell the report of what's happening. Any questions? Lashings?
Did everybody see the,
Looks good.
so we're gonna do an actual ribbon cutting?
Yeah.
And that was kind of brought up to us by a resident who just said they're really grateful that we've gone to this measure. The city's gone to this measure to create that a more safe passage across that busy road. And that they will want to see us. So we're gonna invite the media. You know, we obviously had a couple of serious accidents, one on that crosswalk, one close to it a year ago. And so we're hoping they'll come and cover the positive aspect of what we're doing on that road versus when we had the tough issues that happened a year ago. So we'll have a quick short ceremony. We'll turn on the push the red button, run the ribbon across, cut it, and then run it back across, you know, don't delay people too much.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then we'll celebrate that as a good passage across that road. So hopefully everybody can be there.
It's looking great.
Yeah.
It's looking
Yeah, it
great.
is.
And they got it fast. We got a lot of complaints saying, why is it taking so long? I'd say it's a construction project, folks.
Well, if I can interject something there, we put a 50-day contract length on this, and I know that seems like a long time. But had we shortened it to say 30 days, the price would have gone up about 100,000+, which would have been actual money out of the pocket. And since we were in the summer and school wasn't in, we felt like it was prudent to stretch it out 3 more weeks and save the cost. So yes, putting up a pole seems very simple, and I wish it was that simple, but
If the storm water drain wasn't in such bad shape, it would have gone probably that fast.
the good news is we still have to tear that out at some point in the future and fix it. So,
Well,
we'll leave it alone till we're done.
Yeah,
well, of course, I'm really thankful for this hawk light coming into play. And as I have stated over recent years, this is a step in the right direction, although we need to really keep the heat on the idea of slowing the speeds on Fort Union Boulevard. It's been through a false sense of safety that the majority of the serious injuries or fatalities in Cottonwood Heights for pedestrians have been when they are lawfully in a crosswalk. So knowing that we have vehicles traveling at high speeds on Fort Union Boulevard, we need to, and we have our SS4A, Systems for All, a grant application out. We're working as a city council and as staff toward mitigating the design of Fort Union Boulevard to again slow traffic and make it safer overall for all users, including motorists.
great. Any other thoughts? Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that.
Yes,
Thanks
sir.
for coming over, bro. So, okay, so
Thank you.
the last item that we're gonna spend some time on is item E, the proposed Health Coalition Committee formation. And Mike has obviously done a lot of work with Councilmember Burrell and Councilmember Highland, and so we'll let you start, tell us where we are and recommendations and what we need to do. So along with this, we will make a determination whether to tonight continue the vote to the next meeting, pull it completely, which would be my recommendation, so we don't have to keep doing this until we're 100% ready to go. So anyway, Mike.
Yeah, I just have a couple of minutes. This is all the information that's been in the email correspondence and in your council memo. And then I've included some of the information that Councilmember Burrell emailed over that I can turn it back over to let you guys have that discussion. Again, this is on the agenda for action tonight because it was tabled or continued to a specific date. So that's why, from a procedural perspective, we've kept it on. We're not necessarily recommending you vote on that tonight. So you referenced that, Mayor. Salt Lake County Health Department, who's kind of the support staff in helping get these things off the ground and working with cities to do that. They volunteered and are excited to attend a future work session if requested to answer questions about coalitions and frameworks and how other cities are using it and how much flexibility is offered within each framework and how other cities have kind of taken advantage of that. Just a few notes that I think you already know. To be eligible for technical support funding from Salt Lake County, which we currently have a pending grant of about $70,000. That we have not signed that yet. The county is still processing that, so we haven't signed that. We haven't used any of it yet, but we do need to choose a scientific framework to kind of guide the coalition.
Is that an ongoing grant?
No, you'd have to apply for it on an ongoing basis. So, yep. We're proposing at least this first year, if we proceed that direction, to use that to hire a part-time public health specialist, someone that has background and expertise in this, really to help get the coalition off the ground and get them going and make sure that they have the resources and support they need. And then that would be contingent on receiving grant funding in the future if there was desire for that position to continue. But that being said, to be eligible for the funding, one of several frameworks is required. We've recommended communities that care because it's the it's the one that the county recommended. It's kind of known as the gold standard of the various frameworks that there are. There was some discussion and good questions about this at the last meeting. Communities that care, when you read the scientific data behind it, it focuses on substance abuse prevention in youth, and that is kind of what all the documentation says. That being said, a committee or a coalition's work using that framework does not preclude it from pursuing other community health initiatives like, healthy living and serving the health needs of all populations and socioeconomic populations in the city. So it doesn't funnel us specifically into youth, and that was not made clear in the original ordinance, and we've talked with the county. There is a lot of flexibility in that. The adopting ordinance can be amended to reflect this as well. Coalitions are recommended actually by the county to be catered to individual community health needs. So what Midvale's coalition is doing is different than Kearns's, is different than Sandy's, is likely different than what Cottonwood Heights will pursue. And it's up to the coalition to kind of help, really fine tune that. But some of that can be reflected in the ordinance that we're recommending be adopted at some point to formalize this. So like I said, frameworks including communities that care are flexible. That being said, not following an established framework may preclude the city from support funding. So if there was an interest in support funding, but not following a framework, we'd have to come up with those
So
resources.
may I just clarify, when you say a framework?
Yeah.
That is not synonymous with the citizen committee codification that we use in Cottonwood Heights.
Now, the framework is the process by which the coalition administers public health. The code that we are recommending be used to establish the coalition as a formal recognized board of the city is different. That's just something the city has done by practice for all of its boards and commissions.
Because I think that's one of the reasons why I've asked us to tap the brakes.
Sure.
I think the council needs to be clear, and our new city manager, that a concern was rushing toward a codification that is used for other citizen committees, in which the people on the committee are screened, interviewed, and selected by city staff versus within the coalition. What attracted me to this and what motivated me to champion this at the 2024 retreat with my council colleagues was that this coalition was formed by the community for the community, and the selection process is really quite different than the current system we use for our citizen committees, such as, the Arts Council, the Historical Committee, PTOS, etc. So I just want to make sure that that's been understood.
I think I would be concerned at what liabilities we have as a city if we have a selection process like that, where we're not vetting them from city manager on down through staff.
Leah, tell us more about what you're recommending.
Yeah,
as far
so
as the
what is
selection
done in
process.
other cities such as Holiday, I can't speak, in fact, if you don't mind putting that slide up, I created a table because I wanted to better understand. I got on the phone with Holly Smith, who's on staff.
So it is.
Yeah, and the way they deliberate is in some cities, they have the council talk about, potentially who on the city council is the city council member who is an active voting member of their coalition. They also deliberate, I didn't get into particulars on exactly how they work with the Salt Lake County coordinator. So more so, they're working with someone who has an expertise in public health. We have an economic development director and our new city manager who's from an economic development and community development background. But what I liked about the coalition is that the Salt Lake County, both the two individuals that run the program there, and then they can help to interview and select a coordinator who is paid for with this $70,000 that Mike Johnson mentioned. And so using the health professionals with input from the council and from, usually you have three key leaders. In most cities, it's the chief of police or some kind of police official, somebody from the school district, and somebody, a council member, is typically what is used to be the three key leaders of the Healthy Communities Coalition. And so they are integral in identifying what segments. And of course, Salt Lake County, I don't know, did you work much with the Sandy City Coalition?
I don't know a lot of detail about
Oh, okay.
it. I met several of them, but never really got involved in it.
Yeah, yeah. And so in some cities, like in Midvale, one of the things that pushed them toward this was they were real impressed with how data-driven the programs within the Salt Lake County Healthy Coalitions.
I was just more focused on the recruiting.
Yes, sounds to
What
me
it
too.
used
So
to
I'm
be.
trying to figure out the difference between what we currently do, which is city manager led versus what you're recommending. So,
Can I interject?
yes.
Okay, so I am not opposed to codifying this. My hangup right now is who is going to be on that committee that's going to select the leader of the coalition and its members. And I think in our code, we need to expand that beyond the city manager because we don't have a public health expert in our city right now. I know we could hire one, but I think it warrants us looking at what these various frameworks could do. We could do coalitions light versus communities that care. In fact, there were 4 that were proposed to us. Well, I wasn't a council member December 5th when they came, but there were 4 different. And so I'd like to give us the time to explore that process before we codify it.
Okay.
Who is it that we should actually have on this selection committee?
Do we have any deadlines or time frames specific to the grant?
Not hard deadlines, you know, once the ordinance is codified and the ordinance is more general, that just enables this to exist, then we could pursue finding a public health specialist that could provide some of that expertise.
Well, isn't
but-
the coordinator should be in other cities, they are interviewing for that coordinator, which was paid for by that grant.
Mhm.
And they bring Julia Glade and or
Yep.
the other
Whitney,
Whitney.
So you could extend
which is exactly what we would do to hire that position, but that doesn't, we don't get into that when we codify that the coalition exists. That's a
Well,
staffing
and
level.
for instance, Holiday has worked with the Salt Lake County Coalition
Yep.
Program for years and never codified.
Mhm.
So I just need the council to be clear that it does not deny us of the grant. We don't need to codify this today, tomorrow, or my understanding is even in twenty
So
twenty-four.
you're saying we could go ahead and be broad enough in an adoption, find that liaison, hire them, and then let them have a say in who exists on the
And
committee?
if I may, there's
what we're
different tiers in the formation process. There's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And that's why in the table that I put together and provided for all of you, like where these other cities are within their process. For instance, Midvale is in tier 3 of CTC formation. Holiday has been in process of formation for years. They still have gotten funding. So I just want to emphasize that we don't need to rush to codification in order to be in the formation process. Are we in technically tier 1 of the formation process, Mike? Or-
That's a good question, and I don't have that answer tonight.
Yeah.
What we need to know before we can hire a position and use the grant funds is that the council will utilize a framework that is eligible for that grant funding. Coalitions Light, for example, is not. If we choose Coalitions Light, we probably can't accept that grant funding. But if we choose one of
No, that's
these,
not what it says in December 5th minutes from Julie
Okay.
Wade and Whitney Rosas.
and we can get clarification on that, but we need enough direction that we're pursuing a framework that makes us eligible for this grant funding, which was partially funded by opioid settlement funds, that the coalition's work and the staff that's hired using that funding will follow one of the approved
So
frameworks.
Shane wants to add something.
I would just say this is just adding a new chapter to city advisory committees. The process for appointing members for all of these committees is the city manager makes the appointment. They're subject to advice and consent of the city council. The statement on this thing here, that the council member is a non-voting liaison chosen by the city manager, that's inaccurate. With council approval, it says here, the city council may appoint a non-voting ex officio member of the committee. The city manager may also appoint a member of city staff as a non-voting advisor to the committee. So I don't think that bottom.
Well, we
Boxes.
currently on the roster chosen solely by the staff are 6 people employed by the city. In other, what I was trying to point out by doing this is that in other cities, there's only one or two people from city staff. And so my concern is we have a disproportionately high number of staff members. Again, you know, my interest in this is bringing new voices. We also brought 3 members that are already serving on other citizen committees onto this coalition. And my interest is we have pediatricians, we have gerontologists, we have all kind of amazing people in our community who would like to get involved in advancing, you know, good things for our city. And I want to make sure, because in our current process of selecting citizens, they apply through the website. All the applications are screened only by the staff, that is the city manager and the city staff, and then they're interviewed. And the council members are unaware of the applications that come in, who's getting interviewed. All we get is, in the end, who the city staff would like to advance to the council. I've been now on the council for 2.5 years. I've had citizens in my district come forward, they're qualified, they don't make it through the staff interview process. And then the staff selects and brings forward to the council. So I just am concerned that I want to see the infusion and empowerment of people in our community. And this should happen through the elected representatives. I see that as my obligation. So I don't, you know, I respect the city staff, but I feel that our city is leaning in a little bit too much to a process that is limiting the diversity of voices on our citizen committees. And I want to make sure that this coalition is really a representation of all aspects of our community, especially supporting young families, parents of young children, elderly, you know, it's very important that those.
May I make a suggestion?
Yeah, Shane had one more comment. Councilmember Hannan.
I guess I was going to say, I'm not aware of who's on the list of proposed members of this committee, but I think certainly the council has the ability to reject anybody that's on the list that's proposed by the city manager. That's what I would add.
In the end, it's our
I think
decision,
I think the council can certainly send a message to the manager that, gee, we'd like to have diverse membership. We'd like to have people with
Well,
expertise.
this
We'd like
roster,
to-
if I may point out to our city attorney, this roster in the first meeting has already occurred.
If I could clarify, we held an introductory meeting of recommended membership. We told them the council has to vote on the membership. That will happen after this process plays out. So the idea is you would codify the coalition existing, and then we would bring forward recommended names through the codified process for the council's consideration
Yeah,
at a future meeting.
I don't know anything about the meeting. I was asked to draft an ordinance that followed the Salt Lake County protocol and to fit it into a place in our code that made sense. And so to me, it makes sense to have it be an advisory committee like PTOS and historic committee and everything else, and not go some sort of different route.
Yeah.
The council can certainly do what it wants to do.
Councilmember Hannan.
I think there are enough questions in the current proposed code that it warrants Julia Glade and Whitney Rosas coming back and telling us what other cities have done, allowing us to ask questions of them. A good example of this is Holiday allows a full voting council member on their coalition, or the proposed code would prohibit that. I just think there's sufficient questions that we need answered before we follow ahead with this. I don't want to take years. I do think it needs to be codified. I just think we need to have some outstanding questions answered.
And I don't disagree with that. I think that's a good, I think we're all good with that. So let's,
And we're supportive of that too.
Okay.
From staff's perspective, we would like sooner rather than later to know that whatever direction the council chooses, whether that's codification or not, that we'll use a model or a framework that supports the funding, because we do have that
Yes.
funding pending.
Right.
If we lose that funding, that's gonna really inhibit how we can get this thing off the ground.
Okay.
And we can have that conversation with the county I can have them here probably as soon as the next meeting, like.
And
so
yes,
did we have them on our schedule next meeting?
I believe so.
I think we've even got them penciled in. So
that would be fabulous. gone September 3rd. I would really like to be here. if
Well,
that's a
again,
possibility.
I think we have our hands full with this Geo bond, with all the town meetings. I don't. I'd like to understand whether, how soon we need to rush through this, because that's not the sense, so if you could ask the pointed question of, Whitney Rosas, at what point will we lose this funding? I'd like to know that, because I think it would suit the council better to wait till October. We have a lot going on in August and September. If it doesn't have to happen before October, that would be my preference.
I'm not opposed to it in August because it helps us start thinking about a lot of things, whether we plow ahead or whether we put on the brakes. I'd rather have that presentation sooner than later.
I think as of today, we've got some time. I mean, we're adopting the parameters resolution, but we have 3 hours in our work session, so I think we'd be okay as of today to get them here for the next meeting. Okay.
And we'll get an answer in the interim on how much flexibility do we have before we lose the funding.
And that's,
And I have time to figure out those questions.
yep, Shane.
So I think the issue for tonight is what do you want to do about this ordinance? Do you want to continue it without date? Do you want to continue it until the second meeting in September?
So are we okay to just do a motion to pull it, to not continue it?
That's fine.
And then we'll get it back on when we're ready.
So during the business meeting, there'll need to be a motion to have it pulled and a second.
Okay,
Got it.
continued without date, I think is what you'd probably want.
Sorry,
Continued without date, I think.
we continued without date,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Out, date certain,
Let's just thank the staff for all the work you've already done.
yes.
Just trying to align
Of
what
course.
our intentions were, with what our
100%.
actions are.
We absolutely want to get this right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
perfect. Thanks for everybody's patience. Okay. So we are through to, it's only 6 o'clock. Yeah.
I know.
Do we not have something, am I missing something? No, item 4, review of calendars and upcoming events. So we do have a few to talk about. Town Center General Obligation Bond, Monday, August 12th at 6 p.m. Town Hall, what are we calling that?
Open house.
Open house, yeah, open house. In the Colmore Community Room at City Hall. Hopefully everybody can be there. If you can't, please let us know. That would actually be helpful. Item B is what we talked about earlier, the ribbon cutting for the Hawk Light Crosswalk at Fort Union Boulevard. Friday, so a week from Friday at 10 a.m. We'll have the ceremony, I guess, in the parking lot of the school. I think we've communicated with Vista and the school district, and the school district will actually be there for the ribbon cutting as well. So anyway, the first day of school, this is all done in conjunction with the first day of school for Canyon School District being Monday, August 19th. One of the things we'll ask of the police department is extra enforcement around school hours, and you do a great job anyway, but we'll want, the first day of school's kind of a new, people are not used to the kids out and about at those times, and so we'll want to do extra enforcement for that if that's possible. The Bark in the Park at Mount View Park, August 24th from 9:30 to 11:30. And I think we ought to do a look-alike, like a council member instead of the mayor on that one. So whoever can do it.
Sorry, I'm out of town. That one's not on me.
Anyway.
Glad to be done with that one.
Believe it or not, I don't even like to say Labor Day holiday because that means summer is almost over. Is Monday, September 2nd. City Hall offices will be closed in observance of this holiday. The block party at Hillside Plaza, we don't have an actual date, right, Mike? We're still
We're trying to
working on that?
confirm,
Okay.
food truck availability and things like that.
Okay.
Targeting September.
We want that on your radar that it's coming, yes.
I was just gonna add, I'd like to know that date. I've got a barbecue food truck that will provide free food for all of our first responders.
Right.
Oh,
So-
great.
They'll come in, not everybody, but just the first responders.
And council.
No.
Okay.
Are you targeting a weekend night? Is that? or-
Probably, well, one idea was one large event, and another idea was
we know.
several smaller events throughout the month. trying to figure out availability of making sure we can have people there on all those.
Okay. Anyway, yep, so keep that on your radar. And then the last item is the Monster Mash, Friday, October 25th at 5 o'clock until 7, and that's at the Cottonwood Heights Recreation Center. And
Is that run by them?
I think it's run by the rec centers. Anybody know that? Paula, do you know that?
Monster Mash?
Yeah.
It's an arts council. Well, no, it's our event. It's our city event.
It is our
Arts
city
Council-
event.
Arts Council is there, is present. They have a table and do some arts and crafts with kids, and the rec center supports us in our efforts there.
Okay, great, great. Anyway, that's it. And then we do not have anything to discuss in a closed meeting, so therefore I'll entertain a motion to adjourn our work session, and we'll have an hour to for the business meeting.
Yeah, what will we do with ourselves? I will motion to adjourn the work session.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank